Eye on the issues. Once again, we're going to be talking about what's happening around the great state of Wyoming. Joining me now is House Representative Jeremy Haroldson. Jeremy, you have been part of the legislature since 2021. Is that correct?
That is correct, Mike. Yes. So I was during COVID. We saw freedoms lost, and I decided at that point that I could no longer complain about the issues, but I had to actually step into the position of helping kind of direct the narrative of the state. So I ran in 2020 in that cycle, and then got sworn in January 2021 and took out an 8-year incumbent that was choosing not to really uphold those values or morals that made Wyoming great.
And let's talk about what committees have you made it onto?
Okay, so my first session, pretty much all freshmen, they put on a single committee, and they put me on TRW, which is Transportation, Recreation, and Wildlife, and Cultural Resources. So basically that's tourism, game and fish, the hunting scene, which I'm a very avid outdoorsman and hunter, and so they put me on that committee. I did 2 years on that committee, and then after I was reelected in 2022 cycle, I went on to a much different type of lift. I asked the speaker at that time, he was going to place me on a single again. I said, man, I'm chomping. I want to do more than that. And so we got the opportunity. I got the opportunity to serve on corporations, which is corporations, political subdivisions, which primarily looks at and addresses government regulation as well as election integrity, which are two huge common issues right now. Obviously, we across the entire nation are saying, hey, do we have fair elections and free elections, and is there any fraud? And then the second is, why is the government regulating us so much? And so that's one of my committees. The second is Judiciary, which is overseeing anything having to do with Department of Justice, Department of Corrections, and ultimately just the entire government, oversight in people's lives once they've crossed certain lines legally. So two good lifts, two big lifts, and we've had a lot of fun this interim attacking a lot of issues.
I bet. Now let's begin by diving into what you're doing on judiciary. I know a couple weeks ago you met in Delta-8, which is a synthetic. I guess I don't know if it's considered a synthetic opioid or how you describe that, but let's talk about Delta-8 and let's talk about what the Judiciary Committee has passed.
Sounds good, Mike. So I think to talk about Delta-8, we need to talk about some students in Cody, Wyoming. There was a number of students in Cody, Wyoming over the course of the last couple months that found themselves in the ER due to Delta-8. And we were sitting there going, wait a second, it's CBD. How are these kids finding themselves having issues with a CBD product that we thought was safe? And so it kind of, for the Judiciary Committee, we started going, let's ask a lot of questions about what Delta-8 even is. And so psychoactive substances, what's going on is if anytime you take a natural occurring substance like THC in your cannabis, what we're finding is that labs all over the world are saying, how can we twist this, bend this, or mold this to do something different? And so obviously, Delta-8 is a CBD mixed with an acid. They do it in a chemical reaction and create Delta-8, which is a psychoactive substance, and we're finding is causing major issues in our young population in Wyoming. So that was the need that came to us. And so we charged our legislative staff, our LSO staff to let's take a dive into actually addressing anything that has THC content in it over that 0.03%. That's very important to understand, because the last thing we want to do is come against our hemp industry. We're okay with that. We want to see that, and we don't want to hamper that. And we also don't want to hamper a CBD industry, but what we don't want to do is have something slip through the cracks where we see our young people and people in general finding themselves hurting and on a drug that is technically, as far as we were all concerned, illegal in the state of Wyoming.
And so what did you pass in committee, obviously?
Yeah, so the bill that we passed in committee it's a hemp limitations on psychoactive substance bill. If you can go to the Wyoming leg.gov website and you can pull up this bill draft underneath the Joint Judiciary interim committee topic bill drafts. But what this bill does is it takes and it defines, first of all, what those psychoactive substances are, and then addresses that it has to be under that line of 0.03%. And why that's so vitally important is that is the level by which we're finding naturally occurring Delta-8 in hemp and CBD. But when it comes to the THC content of the synthetic Delta-8, it's much higher than that 0.03%. So we created a net of sorts that would grab these psychoactive substances that have been chemically altered or modified and are now being distributed throughout our state. And so this bill will just take and just filter out those items and give our law enforcement the ability to bring forth charges against those that would be marketing and or selling these items in the state.
And up until now, who has been selling these items in the state?
Up until now, what's been sold in the state, these items have been sold in CBD stores, and they've been sold also online and shipped in. And the problem we have is it's legal. It's legal for all age groups and it's legal for all situations. And so there's nothing that law enforcement can do. There's nothing that the general populace can do to address this in stores in their community where their children can go in and purchase a Delta-8 derivative and in essence get high off of it and have consequences from it.
And so let's change gears a little bit. Let's talk about what's called, I guess, the Safer Banking Act.
Absolutely.
About how that comes into play.
Okay, so the Safer Banking Act, this has been a conversation for a long time, and I'm going to break it down to really rudimentary terms and basically say this, because THC on the federal level is illegal. So marijuana on a federal level is illegal, and then each state has its own rules and or statutes that address it. And this act would actually, in essence, give these industries some protection against lawsuits for them funding businesses in states where their conduct would be considered illegal. And so this has been, the Safer Banking Act has actually been brought before the federal House 7 times from if I remember right, and don't quote me on it, but I think it was 7 times. And it's never made traction until just recently, where it's now finding its way through both houses. And I think we'd be pretty remiss to see that. I mean, I don't foresee our president not allowing this to pass through. And I understand the concept behind it. I think it's a good idea that we protect, because ESG, we've seen all these different issues where banks are being weaponized against industry. But in this situation, what it's doing is it's actually giving almost a safe haven of sorts for potential bad actors in an industry to financially be able to advance their agendas without having to fight any potential legal battles or potential fallout from their actions.
Okay. And let's change gears one more time. The BLM has a proposal out there in respect to Wyoming land. Are you up to speed on that?
Pretty good, yes.
Tell us what they're proposing, because it's kind of big.
Yeah. So the Proposition B that BLM is bringing to us would, in essence, redefine land use for a large portion of BLM over on the western side of the state. And they say a lot of things like this won't hamper access. Well, it closes 950 miles of roads. So I call that hampering access. This won't affect, and they said industry, but it opens up basically all sorts of different loopholes that the government can use to limit our ability for extractives. It'll limit our ability for our basically any improvements on or industry moving on to these BLM properties. In essence, it's under the cloak of just cleaning up their rules, but what it really is it's 30 by 30. It's their ability to say, we're going to slowly but surely shut down public lands in the state of Wyoming, which we predominantly are public lands. We're going to shut down public lands in the state of Wyoming, and we're going to eliminate the ability to be used, eliminate the ability for us to actually drill for oil, natural gas, do uranium, any of those things on these BLM lands in the southwestern part of the state. And if that were the case, it would be the first nail in the coffin, so to speak, to shutting down a huge industry in our state and our ability to have commerce. So it's the federal government pretty much using their lands in an interstate commerce clause breach, and it's something that the Freedom Caucus in the state of Wyoming blew the whistle on first, and we said, there's a serious problem. We need to address this. This is not what it appears on the surface, and this is not what they're telling us. There are thousands of pages that we would have had to read to really know fully what they're doing, and they didn't give ample time for that. They were trying to limit the public comment period. Luckily, we were able to sound the alarm. Since then, the governor has gotten on board. Since then, there have been other individuals in the state Senate as well that have said, hey, whoa, slow down. This isn't acceptable, and this is not what we're going to do. So
what's the next step for this?
So the public comment period is still in effect, and that's happening. There's been some serious pushback from the executive side to the BLM. But one of the things that we're doing as well is we are in the process right now of pushing a $50 million budget item to allow us to push back on the federal government to basically bring it into a litigation case to where we can push back. And this would not be for the Attorney General. This would be for the Wyoming legislature. So we, the legislature, would actually fight this legal battle and find the attorneys we need to fight the federal government as they're trying to take lands away from our state.
And as you mentioned, in respect to the public comment period, obviously, the public speaking out, it's always worth it when you have a comment period to speak out. But bottom line is, what's it really going to take to get the BLM to take their hands off? It sounds like it really may be a legal battle. Absolutely.
So what needs to happen is what we're finding more and more, and I would say this has been a huge slide in the last probably 10 years, is that the only thing that speaks is litigation. And I hate that we've come to that, but it is kind of the nature of the beast we face. And so that's why we're moving in that direction to say, hey, let's start trying to make plans of how we can fight the battle on multiple fronts and actually make the federal government regret trying to take away our rights to use this property and use these lands to further our economy, further our tourism, further our wildlife, and don't get me wrong, we need to manage. I'm all about management, but there's a difference between management and eliminating people's ability to have a livelihood, and that's what we're facing right now. And if they can get their foot in this door, they'll wrench it open, and the Midwest will never be the same ever again if we allow them to do this, because they want their 30 by 30 to predominantly take place in states like Wyoming.
Yeah, I've read a bunch about this, and I think you're pretty much spot on. So moving toward the upcoming legislative session, what do you see as the big issues?
So what I see is that one of our big issues that we have right now that's pretty much front and center is the governor's address of us being the first carbon negative state in the union. The Harvard conversation that went forward, that's reeling a lot of people right now, because people are going, wait a second, this is going to be massively detrimental to the economy of the state of Wyoming. So that's everyone's got that on the forefront of their mind right now. So that's something that we're just addressing and saying, what does this look like? Corporations, we worked on a lot of things because also Rocky Mountain Power did a 29%, almost 30% rate increase request, which right now everyone's struggling, everyone can't afford to buy their groceries, that type of stuff. And now we're putting a 30% rate increase on their electricity. And we're just asking, why are we, and it's directly showing up that we're paying for renewable energy policy decisions in other states with our ratepayers. And so these are the conversations we're having. Another is property tax. Property tax is something that is in a lot of ways I feel out of control and needs to be addressed. We were charged by our constituents last session, fix the property taxes, and that didn't happen. So we have a renewed vigor. The conservative voice in the House has a renewed vigor that we must address that, because we're seeing people that are having to pay hundreds of % higher property taxes now than prior to the prior COVID numbers. And so we need to fix that. We had a $500 million tax surplus just last year alone off of property taxes. So those are a couple things we need to face. The other thing is ESG needs to be addressed. It didn't get addressed in the last session, so we're going to do that. And then me personally, I'm bringing a number of Second Amendment friendly bills, elimination of gun-free zones, as well as the lowering of the concealed carry permit age to 18. So those are just some of the bills that we're seeing come forward on the conservative side that we would love to see become reality in the state of Wyoming.
It sounds like you're looking forward to the session.
Yeah, here we go. It's going to be a good time.
Good deal. All right, Jeremy Haroldson, thank you so much for your time. We appreciate it. If anybody wants to learn more about what the Wyoming Liberty Group does, just go to wyliberty.org. Thanks again, Jeremy.
Thanks, Mike.